The Crooked Epic, 1 The End of Maniacal Madness, 9, Christopher, The Church, 9A, 3. In the middle of the night, the cathartic groans and baleful moans of Martin Barham awoke Theodore Good from down the hall. Theodore drowsily shuffled off his bed to his bedroom door and backed off. He was worried about Barham, but sensed something awry with the sick and wounded former lieutenant's noises. Theodore called out for his father from his bedroom, but as he did, the guest began making more noise to silence Teddy's cry for help. Finally, Teddy pushed open the door and looked down the hall to the open guest room beyond his mother's study. Inside the open guest room door, Mrs. Wilson was wide awake, sitting up in her bed against her pillow. Her eyes looked wide and frightful, glowing, and shining in the darkness, an image which deeply disturbed Teddy until he realized she was wearing her eyeglasses, causing the moon to reflect. Still, she was motionless, with her jaw open in a long gasp or mid-shout. Christopher had left his wounded comrade in the study and had gone upstairs to make calls to the Weir Sheriff's Office about the attack inside the catacombs, and was only in the attic for 2 hours before all of the uproars started on the second floor. Theodore stepped into the hallway further and noticed the study door was closed, but heard rumbling from within and a knocking along the room wall. Mrs. Wilson pointed her finger out to the study entrance as it slowly opened. She shrieked with a shrill and high pitch as Martin Barham emerged, his wild eyes bleeding from their corners and his mouth foaming and drooling. Christopher Good rushed out of the attic and pulled the door closed behind him. Quickly he descended the flight of stairs. Christopher saw Martin before Mr. Barham reacted at all. Mr. Barham moved toward Teddy in a trance as Christopher grabbed Martin's arm. Martin spun around and shoved Christopher against the wall and began screaming and flailing at Mr. Good in rage. Chris clobbered Martin down quickly and kicked him down the stairs. Mr. Good yelled for Teddy to get in the guest room and lock the door with Mrs. Wilson. Martin was on the staircase's landing near the front door, already struggling to stand back up, but had broken his left femur and had a patellar fracture. Christopher started to consider going up to the attic to grab weapons from his private office space, but did not want to lose his chance to stay on top of Mr. Barham's erratic and evasive behaviors and attacks. Chris walked down the stairs slowly, observing whether the broken bones which Mr. Barham had suffered would impede his escape. But without warning, the front door swung open and a boy who looked exactly like Teddy's friend, Darren Lynch, stepped into the doorway and threw a large piece of wood at Chris, reminding Chris of the stories of the fateful day at Horace Lake. Then he pulled Mr. Barham over by his collar. Christopher Good began to readjust the possibility of truth to the stories his son had told him and the police officers earlier. It seemed unbelievable to him at the time, but now he was confused. Without much consideration of the correct protocol about his office with law enforcement, Christopher became enraged at the inhumane and crazed action of his intruders. He ran down the rest of the steps and leaped onto Barham's chest, landing on his sternum with his shin. Darren fell back and scurried out of the doorway into the backyard woods. Meanwhile, Christopher grabbed both of Martin's arms and pushed him over onto his stomach. He twisted Mr. Barham's right arm behind his back and strained to break it, the snapping bones crunching against his wrist. He repeated this procedure with the left arm, incapacitating the man who had gone mad and attacked his son. But this did not stop Martin Barham, who struggled under Christopher's weight and flipped onto his side, leaning up with inhuman strength to bite at Mr. Good's ribs and stomach. Christopher yelped from shocking pain as shreds of his cane clothes and skin tore from Mr. Barham's teeth and jaws. Yet without stopping, Chris began punching Martin savagely in the head, around the eyes and temples, and leaned in with his knees until Mr. Barham finally stopped moving. He impaled Mr. Barham's sternum with the stick which had been flung in by Darren. Mr. Barham was dead. The body was lying on the floor, and Christopher was furious at his former friend's invasion attempt and perpetration. However, something had seemed abnormal about Mr. Barham's cadence, posture, speech, and demeanor from the moment he had found him incapacitated inside the catacomb. Christopher was deeply disturbed at this change of events. Christopher wondered if there was some poison, an unnatural substance, or even hypnosis controlling Mr. Barham's movements. Having made the mistake of abiding by the rules of nature he was accustomed to, he sat on the bottom of the steps of the staircase and looked at the door, wondering what truly lurked out in the dark forest behind his house and cave atop the hill. He walked back to the front door and reopened it, looking outside for the second burglar, the one who had looked like Theodore's classmate. Out by the barn door, a shape crept past the tool shed toward the line of trees behind the lawn. Christopher became angered by the stalker's harassing gait and disrespectful attitude. He hurried up the stairs again and yelled for everyone to stay locked inside their rooms as he continued up the next flight to the attic. With his rifle in his arms, he walked quickly down the stairs to the second floor where Mrs. Wilson had opened their room's door. Christopher commanded her to stay in the bedroom and whispered for her to take the pistol from the bedside closet. Chris reassured her of his recent phone calls to the sheriff and the expected arrival of police to protect him while he went back outdoors. Mr. Good walked down the stairs to the front door, preparing for the attacker to come barging back into the house, but ready now to chase him and shoot him. He was worried he would be too late to see him in the woods, anticipating how if he could not trail Darren to the cave, it might be a chance for the trespasser to loop around and return to the house before Christopher had secured the hillside. After locking the door, Chris ran through the lawn toward the driveway first to retrace the antagonist's steps from the barn to forest. While he walked near the barn door, he made sure the barn was empty and ran through the backyard to the woods in the same direction as Darren walking toward the hill.